Yeah, so banks generate a lot of risk through primary issuance from retail, which is obviously key business for them. Due to the regulatory environment, that their capacity to retain that risk on their books is constrained, and so they then have to offload that somehow so that they can keep doing more primary issuance. In an ideal world, the bank would offset the risk exactly, but there has to be, there's some compromise, because hedge funds maybe don't want to do that thing. They want to do some kind of easier to manage, better risk that kind of fits their macro view, and so there's a conversation that happens to find the kind of optimal solution for both. Compromise. How do you kind of look at these things in a portfolio, these instruments and risk transfer in a portfolio sense, and how do you kind of risk manage and size these things appropriately? I mean, basically sizing is key. You need to have space to add if the market becomes dislocated. Timing is, these things don't work on a systematic basis. Timing is important, and also the structure that you trade is important. So it's important to understand in different scenarios what the maximum possible risk is. Maybe you can mitigate that with various caps and barriers and other options. My key takeaways from the panel, I think, there's a very broad suite now that's very developed in terms of risks that are possible to transfer, and there's a lot of interest in this space. It's very important to be selective and kind of use your discretion in evaluating these opportunities. Dispersion is a very interesting space. So the dispersion trade is basically takes advantage of elevated index volatility and due to kind of demand for index level macro hedges, particularly on the S&P, and supply of single stock volatility, either through retail autocallables on baskets of single stocks, which are often tech stocks, or corporate supply. And by buying one and selling the other one, you have a correlation position. And this I think is particularly interesting because it also gives you a hedge against a kind of a tech bubble if one arose, since the top weights in the S&P are dominated by tech stocks. Dispersion levels at the moment are slightly higher, so either the correlation is slightly lower than is kind of optimal for an entry point. So patience is important, and this can change rapidly. With a small sell-off, index vol can be bid. Autocallable vol supply should mean that single stock vol doesn't react as quickly, so may provide another entry point. It's important to look at the way that you kind of structure these trades. Variance swaps on mutual funds is one example of this. So there's vol demand on mutual funds basically because retail are buying calls, and to supply that, you can sell a variance swap, but the most you could make on a variance swap is half the strike. If you sell it uncapped, and if it's at 5 vol, let's say, that can obviously be a very big number. And can be quite explosive, as happened actually on similar structures in 2008. But by putting a cap, you can mitigate the risk, and then you can also sell a volatility swap instead of a variance swap, which is linear in volatility instead of being convex, because the most you can make on a variance swap, if the vol realizes 0, is half the strike.